Hello, in this lecture we will take a look at how you would use components as your list items. Okay, so this is very important. This is very important to know and to understand how to accomplish that, how to do it in real world projects, because you are going to do that in real world projects and you will do it quite a bit if you're going to use Blazor. This is very useful, and later I will explain why specifically this can be useful. So first of all, what do we have in this project? Okay, let's take a quick look. Let's see. We first have two models. We have. Okay. In general, we have a sort of a hosted application. Okay, Blazor hosted. Right, we have client, we have server, and then we have shared. That's all we have. That's all we need. Okay, this is a standard template. It's taken from a template. The template has been cleaned up, so you don't see all those template-ish files. Instead, you see two controllers, rather one controller and two models. Okay, we also have something we call a fake database. Okay, and in the client side, we have the index page in which we generate the actual list, and then we have user component. So let me explain what these are, what we actually contain. Okay, so if we go to our test model, we will have a user, okay, user data. So we have ID, we have full name, and we have age, a simple user data. Now, each user contains another set of data, which is our second test model. Okay, let's take a quick look. We have bank account ID, bank name, email, and then user ID for which these belong. So basically bank details for each specific user. Now the way you retrieve them is separately. Okay, you do it separately. You have two controllers. You have get users route, and then you have get bank details for users. Okay, so you will need to make two separate calls, and when we get to the front end part, to the client part, I will explain how you do that with components specifically. Okay, so we have basically 2 points of action here, and where we get it from is our fake database. Obviously in a real world project you would have a real database, preferably MS SQL, right? SQL Server. So our fake database is quite basically a couple of models and some data in lists, okay, in static lists. Now each one of these users have an associated bank details record, okay, and the user ID, as you can see, is an integer. So let's get back to the controller and then to the client. Okay, so again, in the controller we have get users and get bank details for the users. The users we get as a list and bank details as a single object, right? Very simple, and we sort that by the user ID. So let's get to the actual list and to the component. In the index.razor you can find the actual list generation. So in this case, to represent the list in a sort of a clean way, we just have a table. As you can see, we have head rather. Okay, and we have lots of THs, which represent user ID, age, full name, bank account, bank name, and email. Okay, and then each row is a component. Before we get any further, we should get to our components, user component.razor, right? And let's take a look at this one. So as you can see, we simply display that in two ways. Okay, in this component, in this particular component, we have a parameter called user. Okay, as you can see right here, user test model, and that is displayed in this table row. Okay, so the first three columns, that would be the user data. So if user is not equal to null, we can display them already, right? So we display that before displaying bank details. And as you can see in the model itself, when the parameters change, that is on parameters set async method of a written method, on that we make another API call to retrieve those bank details. Okay, as you can see, just like that, our route user ID we provide user ID from the parameter. That is why we only call it on the parameters set. Okay, so when the parameters are set, that means the user is in, we can display the user, then we can go ahead and get our bank details. Now, of course, as a default, you could have some kind of a loading icon. It could be a loading icon, it could be a loading text, whatever you prefer, right? So you would show rather the user details, ID, age, full name, and then the user might see that the bank details are loading. Of course, this is just one of the examples. This is a miniature amount of data being transferred, so you would never really see that problem with this kind of a transfer. However, if you do have some more details to transfer, say for example an image, okay, a profile image, you would be better off with doing it separately like that. So you get a list of users, and then whatever data associated with the user comes in the actual component that is generated. Okay, and obviously you could get data from many different places. It would save a lot of time and effort just dealing with that one piece of code in the main page, in which is the list. So if we take a look again at the main page here at the index.razor, we can see that we retrieve users list. Okay, a list of users like that gets assigned, and then it goes through the for each loop. These components get generated like that, and the user data, the user item, is provided. Okay, so it's quite simple. Okay, now normally you might want to make it even smaller. Okay, so you might want to do it perhaps just the user ID, and from the user ID you can derive all the other data that you have in your database. Okay, so if we go to the browser, we can take a look how it works. As you can see, we have a list. We do have some default stuff, don't mind that. And we have our list. Okay, it's a very primitive looking one, but we can reload, and as you can see, it's gonna load, and it has loaded. So you can add some task delays. If you don't believe how it works, you will see that it is indeed loading. Okay, so it is quite simple. It is quite simple to do. But again, you could do it just the user ID, okay, and from the user ID you can derive other stuff. But if you do have more than one set of data, you should do it this way. You should do it using components. Now, of course, the other use case we will cover in the next lectures, and that will be if the list actually needs to be in a way dynamic. Okay, so you may need to remove items, you may need to add items. If you need that, we will cover that in the next lectures, and with that we are done with this one.